Georges Simenon was a prolific and hugely successful Belgian writer, creator of the famous character of Police Superintendent Maigret, who starred in 75 of his novels and several TV series. When we interviewed him for the South Bank show, Simenon was living in a modest place in Lausanne, Switzerland. And it was there that I talked to him about his obsessive work.
What drove you to writing?
I don't know, it's not by ambition, because when I start writing, I thought that it was a very quiet life, and without notoriety, and without the money. It's why my first idea was to be priest or officer. So, because I saw the priest and the officer walking in their garden or in the street, and they had time to write, I thought it was necessary to have a job. But I learned only at the age of 19 or 20 that it was a possibility of having a little money out of writing.
What's evident from the beginning is the colossal drive. I mean, you write scores of stories for these magazines.
Oh,
dozens every month, never mind every year.
Oh, every month I wrote from 4 to 5 novels, because it took me 3 days to write a novel. But I was working all the day. Even if I had a night out with my friends or in my studio, I will at 6 o'clock in the morning start typewriting, and I will write until 6 in the afternoon. Many times I did write 80 pages a day.
When you came to Paris, though, you
yes
spent a lot of time around the bars and the rougher districts.
Yes, and little bistro, a little restaurant, small restaurant, and cheap restaurant, because I was very poor.
When you were going around Paris, then, were you looking for adventures? Was that basic? After your day's writing, you would go out for a drink and
I had a lot of adventure, but especially with women. I was very interested by women, and I thought that you can understand a woman if you didn't have relation very intimate with her. So I was always looking for a woman.
And according to your memoirs, it was very successful looking for women, as far as I can... there were quite a lot of women that you discovered.
A lot.
You said that you didn't think you could understand a woman unless you had intimate relations with her.
Yes.
You believe that?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's a human contact, and it's the most intimate contact you can have with people.
How do you understand a man, then?
Oh, I understand them less than the woman, because I had not these experiences with men.
I first came across Simenon on British television with the BBC series on Maigret, with Rupert Davis striking the match on the wall, lighting the pipe. I don't suppose you get away with it these days. Anyway, it was a terrific series, and he was fine, and the stories were quite wonderful. A different sort of psychological thriller, and took you in Paris. And I think an accordion played in the background, shades of Edith Piaf, so irresistible. Then I began to read him, read some of the Maigret novels. I think there were about 75 novels and a couple of dozen short stories in that series alone. He's supposed to have written about 800 works of fiction, long and short. Some of them took him 3 days. The longest took him 10 days. He would sit down with pencils lined up there and paper lined up there, and strict orders only to be interrupted when he wanted to be interrupted. Food sent up to him, and write in 10 days the novel, complete. That was it, went away, and then, according to report, He made for the nearest brothel and spent 2 or 3 days there, which was very exciting to young writers of our day who didn't really know what brothels were, frankly, except in books, and then come back and write another one. And he was a mysterious figure.
Simenon's adventures in Paris when he was a young man are fully used in all his books, but particularly in the Maigret stories. The bars and bistros, the clubs and streets of Paris are Maigret's beat, just as they once were the hunting ground for Simenon himself. Was Maigret a success from the beginning?
Yes. After 3 months, the rights were sold in England, in Germany, in Italy, and then more and more after.
Did you find that the public then forced you to write more Maigret books? They demanded more Maigret books from you?
Yes, yes. After 18 Maigret, I stopped.
After 18?
18.
Yeah.
I wrote 18 Maigret once a month. One a month. And one day, I went to see my publisher, who was Fayard, and I told him, look, now I stopped the Maigret stories, and I will not anymore write detective novel. I said, well, you are a fool. You can earn as much money as you like with this job, and now you said, what do you will write now? I said, just plain novels. And he said, oh, gosh, you will do like Conan Doyle. He was very successful with his Sherlock Holmes, and then he started writing other novels, what he called 2 serious novels, and it was a flop. I said, okay, it will be a flop, but I will write for my pleasure. And I did. And I keep as many readers than with my Maigret.
So it was no flop?
And for 5 years, I wrote only plain novels. Then I got so many letters from readers from all the world. After this time, I was translated in 16 or 18 languages. And people said, why don't you write about Maigret anymore? And some critics said, you seem ashamed of Maigret stories and so on. I said, oh, now I can just once a year write a Maigret. And I did. When I was too tired to start a hard novel, as I called them,
a hard novel, yes.
I did a Maigret, a hard novel, I said. And then I did a Maigret. For example, in August, when it's very warm, then it's not easy to write
a hard novel.
I did a Maigret.
Like Simenon, Maigret is interested in character and motive, and Maigret reconstructs a crime in much the same way as Simenon constructs a novel.
She hated her husband because he loved her and was old. Fell over the cliff to his death.
Accident?
Perhaps. But what if this chauffeur knew that it was not an accident? That knowledge would be worth money to him. More than money to this chauffeur. Maigret.
The thing about him as a detective is that he's a person brimming over, not with sentimentality, but with human empathy. So when he comes across a crime, you know that he's always going to be opening up the secrets of the human heart. And he doesn't necessarily, when he discovers who the murderer is, he doesn't necessarily prosecute. That's one of the very exciting things about the story. What he's uncovering, this very happily married man, usually is disastrous human relationships. The failure of men and women, usually, to get along together, and their failure in sex, and their humiliations in that regard, and how love can turn to hate.
Maigret is about like me. He's not a very intelligent man, not not even intelligent, but he has intuition. I am not intelligent at all, but I have intuition. I write my books just with my intuition. I don't like intelligence, and Maigret has intuition too. When he's with a man, face to face, after such time, 1 hour or 2 or 3 hours, he will understand the man. He find out what is in the deep of this man.
Why do you say that you don't have intelligence?
That's true.
It would seem to most people that someone who's written as many books as well as you have has a great deal of intelligence.
Yes, but I never did know when I wrote a book what will come in the book. I know the first chapter only, and then every morning, since I am in the skin of my characters, it comes by itself. That's intuition, it's not intelligence. I never made a plan.
When you say get in the skin of your characters, do you mean that do you act it out? Do you become the characters you're writing about?
Well, it's as much that after I start a novel, I hear often my children, they were young at this time, said, "Oh, Dad, we will have a bad week." I said, "Why?" "Because your character are certainly sad and old and dejected because you walk like this and your face is tired." I said, "Oh." And it's true, because I start walking and speaking like my character all through the novel.
And if your character drinks whiskey, for example?
I drink.
Really?
Yes, true. As if he drinks Calvados, I drink Calvados, and if he drinks beer, I drink beer.
Where do you think this compulsion comes from?
I don't know. I never asked myself from where it comes. I'm not curious. I said, only it will, I ask that it will be for a long time.
Have you always had such a very strict routine? Did you always have, through your almost 60 years of writing?
Yes.
A very, very strict routine?
Very strict. Very strict.
It's abnormally strict.
Even I am meticulous about routine.
Can you tell us about your routine?
Yes. The day before starting a novel, for example, I change everything in my office. I have a little table for my tea. I put some pipes already full of tobacco. I just feel like in a circus at this time. And in the morning, I awoke at 6 o'clock, and at 6:30, I start to write. I put the do not disturb at the door, and nobody comes in my office.
And after 10 days, the book is finished, and that's it?
The book is finished.
Not only finished, but banished forever from his house and his life. "I hate my books," he says, and he means it. He won't have a single one in the house, not one. The only books he keeps are dictionaries and a few books on medicine. Why do you think you need, or have needed, such a very, very strict routine?
I don't know, but I have the same routine even in my ordinary life. I think that routine gives you more and more time. If you don't have any routine, you lose a lot of time. And since I like to have the more free time as is possible, I have a routine very sharp, very always the same.
My brother's a university academic. He went into his university library and discovered that there were no books by Simenon among the French literature, even though he's arguably the greatest 20th century French writer, I would suggest. Many people, I think, have hardly heard of him. They've heard of Inspector Maigret, but they wouldn't necessarily know who created Inspector Maigret. And I find that very odd. André Gide, not a bad writer himself, really admired Simenon. I mean, he put him right up there with Balzac. because love him or loathe him as a man or as a writer, Simenon was a towering figure. And he did transform the nature of French fiction, really. He carried over the kind of Zola realism into this minimalist form. And that's what I think is really so skillful about him. He was a journalist. He was through and through a journalist. He trained as a journalist. He didn't have any university education. He left school very young, went straight into a newspaper office, and he knows how to tell a story and how to get it down to its absolute bare essentials. Zola was a very leisurely 19th century journalist who made fiction out of journalism. Simenon was the opposite. He was like, as Mrs. David says in her provincial French cookery book all the time, reduce, reduce, reduce. And Simenon also believed that the tales should be told in as simple a way as possible. His ambition was that there shouldn't be more than a vocabulary of 2,000 words in each book. So that even if you've got very basic French, it's easy to read him in French, whatever your language.
When you said that you wanted to discover what was inside, the naked
Yes.
man, what have you discovered about the naked man?
You know, somebody asked Balzac, who was novel character, a character for a novel. And Balzac replied, any man in the street, but Hugo at the end of himself. We have all the instinct, we are all murderers. We are all criminals, but we don't kill, we don't go against the law because of timidity or of education or of not having the occasion. Otherwise, look, during a war, a man can kill everybody and even children. And during a war, too, a man who was very quiet man in his ordinary life will rape a girl of 13 or 14. It happens in every war. So, who changed him? The occasion.
We just started the South Bank show. It wasn't working because I was trying to do too many things at the same time. I was trying to do a program about filmmaking film of substantial figures, and I was trying to do a magazine program and the other half of it. And you couldn't do both because I didn't have enough hands on deck. If I'd had 3 times as many hands on deck, it wouldn't have been enough. Running a magazine program is the most people-intensive thing you can do on television. And to see everything in a week and report on it, even though you've got people like Jules Maigret and Gerald Scarfe on the panel, it was collapsing. And I really wanted to stop doing the program for 6 weeks to sort it out, because I knew how to sort it out, but I needed 6 weeks off air. But I wasn't given that. So a couple of us were doing the program while the other 3 main producers were making films for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks on, if we ever got there, which we just about managed to do. And one of these was Simenon. We used to go out on Saturday nights then. And so we went to his place in Switzerland on Friday. We shot the interview on Friday. We shot it in reversal. So when we cut it on Saturday, we didn't have time to switch it around and do all the tricks. We just put it out so it came on the screen. It looked okay. Anyway, it was quite a good interview, I thought. But it could have been so much better if it hadn't been for the new Mrs. Simenon, because she insisted at the last minute on coming in and sitting right beside him. I mean, as if there was a chair there, there. He's sitting here, wanting to be talked to. She's sitting there, watching him. And she didn't want him to say all the things I wanted him to say. So that part was blocked out. Didn't matter to me very much, because I wasn't particularly interested, and never have been, in people's private lives, except that he brought it up in his conversation, and it came up in his writing all the time. So that dimension was gone. But his views were there, his style was there. He was much diminished by the ogreous presence of this lady. He was probably looking after his career and his health and his future prospects better than anybody could have any right to expect. He thought that we were much inferior to animals.
So you think that basically we are still very close to, perhaps you would describe it as animal behavior, or would you not?
Animal behavior?
Yes.
But we are animals. I don't see the difference. We are animals, but a little inferior to most animals.
What does that leave us with? What is the man that you see, the naked man that you see after these years of writing? What is he like?
That the man is a very little creature, very small one. It's very poor knowledge of man, even of a great southern, what we call...
Great scholar.
Yeah, so little. The best biologists, for example, today, say that they know nothing. They just start to feel some ideas, but they don't know the ideas at all. And the doctor said that until 10 years ago, the medicine did not exist.
So man's a poor thing.
Yes, you see, the man is very little thing, a very little thing. I love him because he's little, just.